The lights never turn off in this building. 3 in the morning. Fluorescent hum. Security cameras rotating silently. A fingerprint scanner beeps. Access granted. Another trusted employee enters. Badge clipped. Clearance approved. Background checked. Psychological evaluation passed. Inside these walls are nuclear codes, covert identities, satellite intercepts, war plans. Everything is protected, except one thing: trust, because somewhere in this building, someone is feeding secrets to the enemy. Not loudly, not recklessly, carefully, deliberately. Over time, and the most terrifying part, they still show up to work every day. They attend meetings. They shake hands. They look loyal. In the world of counterintelligence, betrayal doesn't arrive with gunfire. It arrives with a smile. This is the secret war you never see. The war against insiders. The war where suspicion becomes strategy. The war where agencies investigate their own. And once it begins, no one is above suspicion. If you're refascinated by the psychology behind hidden wars like this, the silent battles happening inside secure walls, subscribe now and stay with us. These stories aren't fiction. They're real, documented cases that shaped global intelligence history. And the deeper we go, the darker it gets. It has happened before, and it will happen again. It always begins the same way. Not with a dramatic revelation, with an anomaly. A small irregularity buried inside millions of routine actions. An analyst notices a pattern shift. A login at an unusual hour. A document accessed that doesn't align with current assignment. A badge swipe into a compartmented area without clear operational necessity. Individually, these things mean nothing. Together, they whisper. Counterintelligence officers are trained to listen to whispers. Inside major intelligence agencies, there are dedicated internal security divisions whose only job is to assume that trust can fail. Their mandate isn't glamorous. They are not the field officers recruiting foreign assets. They are not the covert operatives crossing hostile borders. They watch their own, because history forced them to. From the damage caused by insiders like Aldrich Ames and Robert Hansen, intelligence communities learned a brutal lesson. The most devastating threats often wear the same badge. So the moment an anomaly appears, a quiet review begins. No accusations, no confrontation, just observation. The suspect, though no one uses that word yet, continues their daily routine. Morning coffee, security check, briefing attendance, data access, casual conversations in the hallway. But somewhere else in the building, a small group has started reconstructing their digital footprint. Access logs are pulled. Historical patterns mapped. Baseline behavior established. What does normal look like for this role? How often does someone in this position access this database? What time do they typically log in? What files are standard for their portfolio? Counterintelligence is not emotional. It is mathematical. Deviation is everything. And modern systems are designed to detect it. Advanced user activity monitoring tools flag irregular data pulls. Artificial intelligence compares current actions against months, sometimes years, of behavioral history. But technology is only part of it. Because betrayal is rarely just technical. It's psychological. Investigators begin reviewing personnel records, performance evaluations, recent complaints, travel history, financial disclosures. Was there a recent divorce? A denied promotion? Unexplained debt? Sudden foreign contacts? The uncomfortable truth is this: insider espionage often begins long before classified information is handed over. It begins with motive, money, ideology, ego, revenge, coercion. The acronym MICE, used in intelligence circles, summarizes the most common drivers: money, ideology, compromise, ego. And counterintelligence teams are trained to look for early indicators of all four. But they move carefully. because suspicion alone can destroy careers. A false accusation inside an intelligence agency doesn't just end employment. It can end trust permanently, so the process unfolds in layers. First layer, passive monitoring. No alerts, no visible change. The individual remains unaware. Second layer, enhanced scrutiny. Access privileges are reviewed under administrative pretexts. A routine audit, a compliance check, a procedural update. The suspect still doesn't know. Meanwhile, analysts examine something most people underestimate: timing. Does sensitive data access correlate with international events? Do downloads spike after high-level briefings? Does the person access files unrelated to their direct operational responsibilities? Patterns begin to form, or they don't. And that uncertainty is where counterintelligence lives. Because sometimes anomalies are innocent. Curiosity, misclicks, workflow shifts. But sometimes they're reconnaissance. In past real-world cases, insider spies didn't steal everything at once. They moved slowly, carefully, testing the system, understanding thresholds. They learned what triggered alerts and what didn't. So counterintelligence learned to adapt. Thresholds became dynamic, alerts more nuanced, monitoring less obvious. The suspect's communications are quietly evaluated, not content at first, but metadata. Who are they contacting? How frequently? Are there encrypted channels outside normal operational use? Foreign travel is cross-referenced. Financial records are re-examined. In the case of Aldrich Ames, it wasn't ideology that exposed him. It was money. A CIA officer earning a modest government salary suddenly purchasing a $500,000 home in cash. Lifestyle inflation? That's a red flag. So analysts now look for subtle lifestyle changes. New car, luxury vacations. Debt suddenly cleared. These indicators don't prove guilt. But counterintelligence is a discipline built on accumulation. No single red flag convicts. Multiple flags create probability, and probability justifies escalation. Inside a secured conference room, the small team assigned to this review meets regularly. They speak in controlled language. No one says traitor. They say subject. They say person of interest. Emotions are suppressed because paranoia is dangerous. But so is denial. One senior investigator might ask, "What's the operational necessity for this data pull?" Another might respond, "There isn't one." Silence follows. That silence matters. Still, they wait. Because the most critical mistake in counterintelligence is premature confrontation. If you accuse too early, you lose visibility. A guilty insider will shut down access channels, destroy evidence, warn handlers. So patience becomes strategy. The suspect continues attending meetings, perhaps even contributing to discussions about security threats. And that's the psychological strain investigators carry, the possibility that the person speaking about national security might be undermining it. Trust begins eroding internally. Investigators start questioning themselves. Are we overanalyzing? Is this confirmation bias? Are we seeing patterns because we expect to? Counterintelligence requires balance between skepticism and restraint. Too aggressive, and you create internal witch hunts. Too passive, and you enable betrayal. Meanwhile, monitoring intensifies invisibly. File transfers are mirrored in real time. External storage devices are logged. Cloud activity is mapped. Unusual encryption software is flagged. The subject prints classified material, that too is recorded. Because modern espionage doesn't always involve secret meetings in parking garages. It can be as simple as photographing a screen, or as sophisticated as embedding data in innocuous transmissions. Weeks turn into months. The case grows thicker. Still circumstantial, still incomplete, but heavier than something shifts. A new anomaly. A compartmented file accessed late at night. A restricted archive opened without direct assignment linkage. This isn't curiosity. This is targeted. The team freezes the session capture, replays it, examines the path taken through the database. It's precise, intentional, and suddenly the investigation moves from theoretical to operational. Surveillance isn't just passive anymore, becomes strategic. Because if this individual is acting on behalf of a foreign power, they may not be alone. Handlers, dead drops, digital exchanges. The team begins asking a terrifying question. How long has this been happening? And more importantly, what damage has already been done? The building still looks calm from the outside. Lights glow steadily. Security guards rotate shifts, employees badge in and out. But inside one sealed room, a different reality is unfolding. A realization that the enemy might not be across the ocean. He might be across the table, and that realization changes everything. Because once suspicion becomes plausible inside an intelligence agency, no one is ever seen the same way again. The air changes, conversations feel measured. Glances last half a second longer. Doors close more often, but the subject remains unaware. That's critical. At this stage, counterintelligence shifts from quiet analysis to controlled containment. Access is not revoked yet. That would signal exposure. Instead, access is subtly reshaped. Permissions are adjusted under administrative justifications. Certain files become slightly harder to reach. Some compartments require additional authorization. This isn't punishment, it's bait. Investigators want to see how the subject reacts. Does he notice the restriction immediately? Does he attempt alternative pathways? Does he contact someone shortly afterward? Behavior under pressure reveals more than behavior under comfort. Monitoring expands beyond digital logs. Physical movement inside the facility is mapped in detail. Badge swipes are layered against camera timestamps. It's not to create drama, but to establish rhythm. Counterintelligence officers study rhythm obsessively. Humans are creatures of habit. We arrive at similar times. We take similar routes. We access similar materials. When rhythm breaks, it speaks. The subject begins staying later than usual. Not dramatically later, just enough to shift pattern density. A half hour here, 40 minutes there. Late-night access isn't illegal. But late-night access to unrelated compartments is strategic. The investigation team runs scenario modeling. If this individual were exfiltrating data, what would the method be? USB device. Encrypted upload. Cloud synchronization disguised as routine traffic. Steganography embedded inside normal outbound files. They don't guess blindly. They test. Digital forensic specialists simulate extraction attempts within sandboxed environments to see what would trigger alerts and what wouldn't. Every vulnerability is examined as if the suspect already knows it, because the most dangerous insider threats are not reckless, they're patient. In previous espionage cases, insiders studied internal security systems before acting. They learned audit cycles. They understood blind spots. They timed actions during staffing gaps or shift rotations. So now the team studies staffing patterns too. Who is on duty when anomalies occur? Are certain supervisors consistently absent? Does the subject's activity align with lower oversight windows? The web tightens. Financial analysis deepens. Quiet subpoenas through legal channels examine banking anomalies. Nothing dramatic yet. No offshore wire transfers discovered. But there are subtle irregularities. Debt reduced faster than expected. A secondary account opened recently. Traveled to a foreign conference with extended layovers not fully explained. None of this proves espionage. A counterintelligence is cumulative. And then comes one of the most psychologically complex tools in the arsenal: the reinvestigation interview. Scheduled as routine, professional.com. The subject sits across from an internal security officer, trained not just in questioning, but in behavioral analysis. Tone is conversational, just updating records, standard clearance, renewal. The questions begin simple. Travel history, foreign contacts, financial disclosures. Then gently sharper. Have you had any unauthorized contact with foreign nationals? Has anyone ever approached you for classified information? Micro-expressions matter here, not dramatic sweating or shaking. That's Hollywood. Real tells are subtle. Delayed responses, overly precise wording, excessive justification, controlled breathing patterns that don't match baseline demeanor. The interview is recorded, later analyzed frame by frame. Still, they don't confront, because confrontation is a point of no return. Instead, they schedule a polygraph as part of routine reinvestigation. Controversial tool, imperfect, not admissible proof in many courts, but useful. Not because the machine detects lies flawlessly, because stress responses reveal cognitive strain, and more importantly, how the subject behaves after the test. Does he become withdrawn? Does he suddenly alter digital habits? Does activity drop sharply? A sudden behavioral correction can be more suspicious than the anomaly itself. The polygraph results return inconclusive, which in counterintelligence language means nothing and everything. The subject continues working, but now digital surveillance is real-time. Every keystroke mirrored. Every file access duplicated to a secure monitoring server. Network traffic analyzed at packet level. Investigators introduce a subtle strategy. Controlled exposure. A specific classified file is slightly modified, embedded with a digital watermark invisible to the user. If that file appears anywhere outside authorized channels, it can be traced definitively. This is not entrapment. It's confirmation insurance. Days pass, then weeks. Tension builds inside the monitoring room. Analysts rotate shifts to maintain 24-hour oversight. No one outside this circle knows the magnitude of what may be unfolding. And then it happens. The watermarked file is accessed again, not once, twice. The second time, it's exported, not printed, not forwarded internally. Exported. The system flags it instantly. Traffic analysis detects encrypted outbound data within minutes of the export event. Destination obscured behind layered routing, but the timestamp alignment is undeniable. Inside the sealed monitoring room, silence takes over. This is no longer anomaly clustering. This is operational behavior. Legal teams are briefed immediately. Warrants prepared in advance are finalized. Arrest protocols reviewed, but timing remains critical. They need certainty. They need the digital chain intact. Investigators trace the encrypted session further. Foreign server nodes, relay points, obfuscation layers. Professional tradecraft, not amateur curiosity. This changes the threat assessment. If the subject is communicating with a hostile intelligence service, then this breach isn't isolated. It's connected. Now damage assessment begins in parallel. What compartments did he have access to? Which human assets could be exposed? Which operations could collapse if compromised? The weight of that question settles heavily, because insider espionage doesn't just leak documents, it can cost lives. Meanwhile, the subject walks through the hallway the next morning like nothing has changed, smiles at colleagues, attends briefing, even participates in discussions about emerging foreign threats. The duality is staggering. The hunter may be sitting in the same room as the hunted. Investigators now face the final dilemma: move immediately and prevent further leaks, or wait for one more transfer to strengthen the legal case. Waiting feels dangerous. Acting too soon feels incomplete. Counterintelligence operates inside that razor-thin space between caution and urgency. And in that space, every decision carries irreversible consequences. Because once they act, there is no quiet observation anymore. There is only exposure. And exposure changes everything. The decision is made just before dawn. Not in panic, not in anger, but in controlled, deliberate silence. The digital chain is complete. The watermark confirms external movement. The encrypted traffic aligns perfectly with the export timestamp. It's enough. Inside the secured operations room, final protocols are activated. Access credentials are queued for instant revocation. Building security is discreetly notified. An arrest team is positioned not in tactical gear, not with flashing lights, but in plain clothes, indistinguishable from any other professionals walking into work. Because counterintelligence does not perform arrests for spectacle. It performs them for containment. The subject arrives that morning like every other morning, coffee in hand, badge clipped. Neutral expression. He scans into the building. And in that moment, it is likely the last time that badge will ever work. Upstairs, investigators watch his movement in real time. Every camera feed, every hallway turn, every elevator stop. There is no dramatic chase, no last-second escape. Real insider spies rarely run. They rely on normalcy. He enters his office, logs in, and within seconds, his access fails. A small notification on the screen. Credentials invalid. That is the first crack in the illusion. Before confusion turns into calculation, there's a knock at the door. Polite, controlled. "Sir, we need you to come with us." No shouting. No drawn weapons. Just a quiet transfer from employee to suspect. As he is escorted out, colleagues look up, confused, uncertain, replaying years of shared conversations in their minds. Was there a sign, a hint, a moment that felt off? Trust fractures in real time. Inside the building, the containment phase begins immediately. His workstation is seized. Crypted devices isolated. Personal lockers secured. Network privileges terminated across all systems simultaneously. Damage assessment teams move in parallel. They reconstruct every access event across months, sometimes years. They correlate his data pulls with global incidents. Did a covert asset disappear after a specific archive was accessed? Did an operation fail shortly after certain files were exported? Did a hostile nation suddenly demonstrate knowledge they shouldn't have possessed? These are the questions that haunt intelligence leadership. Because insider betrayal is uniquely devastating, an external hacker breaches defenses. An insider bypasses them. An external spy infiltrates slowly. An insider already belongs. And that's what makes counterintelligence such a psychologically brutal discipline. It requires agencies built on secrecy to constantly suspect themselves. The investigation expands beyond the individual. Who recruited him? When did first contact occur? Was it financial desperation? Ideological shift? Ego? Coercion? Often, the recruitment phase predates the crime by years. A casual encounter at a conference. A cultivated friendship. A vulnerability quietly identified and nurtured. Foreign intelligence services are patient. They don't demand secrets on day one. They build dependency. They offer money slowly. They test loyalty with low-level information. And by the time classified material changes hands, the psychological trap is already set. Interrogations begin. Not theatrical, methodical. Counterintelligence interrogators are trained to dismantle narratives carefully. They understand that most insiders rationalize their actions. I didn't give them anything critical. I was just sharing. Analysis? It wasn't about money. I was overlooked. Self-justification is common. Very few see themselves as villains. Meanwhile, prosecutors prepare charges. Espionage statutes, unauthorized transmission of national defense information. Conspiracy counts. But beyond the legal system lies the internal reckoning. Security protocols tighten. Access permissions are narrowed across departments. Monitoring algorithms are updated. Training modules revised. Employees are reminded gently. But clearly, that vigilance is permanent. Morale shifts. Some officers become more guarded. Others more paranoid. And leadership must carefully balance security with cohesion. Because here is the paradox of counterintelligence. If you monitor too aggressively, you destroy trust. If you monitor too lightly, you invite betrayal. There is no perfect equilibrium. Only constant recalibration. The arrested insider will eventually face court. Headlines may surface. Media narratives will simplify the story. But what the public rarely sees is the silent aftermath inside the agency. Colleagues who once shared classified discussions now question their instincts. Supervisors re-examine past evaluations. Friends feel deceived. The psychological shock ripples far longer than the news cycle. And somewhere in a secure archive, this case becomes another training file. Another lesson. Another reminder that insider threats are not theoretical. They are cyclical. History has shown it repeatedly, from Cold War penetrations to modern cyber-enabled espionage. Different eras, same vulnerability, human weakness. Counterintelligence officers know something most people never think about. The greatest security systems in the world cannot fully eliminate betrayal. Because betrayal is not a software flaw, it's a human decision. You can reinforce firewalls. You can encrypt every channel. You can compartmentalize information into fragments so no one sees the whole picture. But if one trusted individual chooses to cross the line, the damage can be profound. And so, the war continues. Not loudly, not publicly, but constantly, inside secure buildings with no visible drama. Inside server rooms humming quietly. Inside interrogation rooms where truth unfolds slowly. A war of suspicion and restraint. Of patience and precision. It's a war where the enemy may sit across from you in a meeting, nodding in agreement while planning to undermine everything that meeting represents. That is the secret world of counterintelligence. Not glamorous, not cinematic in the Hollywood sense, but deeply, relentlessly human. And perhaps that is what makes it so unsettling. It's because the next breach won't necessarily come from across a border. It may come from across a desk. And somewhere right now, in a building that looks calm from the outside, someone is watching for it. This documentary script is based on publicly available historical cases, declassified material, and documented counterintelligence practices. Certain scenes and sequences are dramatized for narrative storytelling purposes. No classified operational methods, sensitive procedures, or confidential sources are revealed. The intent is educational and analytical to explore the psychology and structure of counterintelligence, not to disclose real-world security vulnerabilities.